Just 3 days after being crowned European champion, Tadej Pogacar was back on the bike. No celebrations, no rest. Only that relentless drive that defines him. On Tuesday, he lined up at the Tre Valli Varesine 2025, wearing the European stripes and already thinking of his next target. Il Lombardia, the final monument of the year. Beside him stood a name that is no longer a secret. Isaac del Toro, the young Mexican phenomenon who continues to grow inside the UAE Team Emirates XRG. Together, they formed the most feared duo in the peloton, ready to take on giants like Egan Bernal, Primoz Roglic, and Tom Pidcock. The atmosphere buzzed with expectation, and yet what unfolded would surpass anything anyone had imagined. The Tre Valli Varesine, a race of endurance and cunning, offered 198 demanding kilometres, a brutal mix of rhythm, elevation, and strategy. Everyone expected Pogacar to attack where he always does, on the steepest climb. But the Slovenian had other plans. When the moment came, he didn't attack uphill, he attacked downhill. A move so bold, so unexpected, that it left the entire peloton stunned. But before that madness, the race had to simmer, and in that kind of slow-burning chaos, Pogacar is a master. From the very start, UAE Team Emirates XRG dictated the tempo with military precision. Del Toro, as sharp as ever, acted as the perfect link between Pogacar and the rest of the team, setting a calm but intimidating rhythm at the head of the group. Both riders remained alert but unhurried, saving energy, analysing every rival, waiting for the storm they knew they would unleash later. Behind them, the peloton rode with an unusual quietness, that respectful silence that only appears when Pogacar is in the race. Because when he rides, everyone knows the script can change at any moment. On the roads of Lombardy, the fans sensed it too. Crowds lined the barriers, waving flags, shouting his name. This wasn't just another one-day race, it was the return of a world champion, a European champion, and a rider who seems addicted to rewriting cycling's limits. With Del Toro by his side, it already felt inevitable. Another day of total domination for UAE. The morning light spread softly across the Lombard roads, glinting off the helmets of more than 100 riders who knew what kind of day awaited them. The first kilometres rolled by at a fast but steady rhythm, controlled, as if everyone in the peloton understood that the real battle would come later. Then, at 185 kilometres to go, the day's breakaway finally took shape. 5 brave men breaking clear. Andrew August, Kevin Colleoni, Lorenzo Milesi, Davide Ballerini, and Mattia Baez. They worked together quickly, finding a rhythm, and within minutes they had carved out a 2-minute lead. It was the classic early scene of any big race. The dreamers at the front, the predators watching from behind. At 180 kilometres from the finish, Movistar team made their presence felt with Lorenzo Milesi in the escape, while in the main group the tension began to fade into a kind of tactical calm. Tadej Pogacar sat quietly in the middle of the peloton, helmet low, eyes forward, shielded by his teammates. Close behind rode Isaac del Toro, ever alert, scanning every wheel, every move, like a radar locked onto the front. The gap grew to 2 minutes and 45 seconds, but there was no panic in the UAE car. Everything was under control, and control is something this team understands better than anyone. At 166 kilometres to go, the breakaway held almost 3 minutes over the peloton. The average speed was over 40 kilometres per hour. Fast, but not threatening. The UAE let them have their moment, allowing the race to unfold naturally. Pogacar looked composed, almost expressionless, as if calculating the perfect time to strike. Del Toro, meanwhile, carried himself with the calm confidence of a rider who already knows his purpose. Their energy was conserved, their focus total. At 148 kilometres to go, the race was in balance. The gap hovered around 3 minutes, the UAE dictating the pace like a conductor leading a symphony, precise, deliberate, inevitable. There was no need for haste. Every kilometre ticked away like a countdown to chaos. And both Pogacar and Del Toro, 2 riders at different points of their careers, but with the same hunger, were ready for the moment when the quiet would end and the storm would begin. The calm shattered just past the 100-kilometre mark. After hours of control, the peloton suddenly began to tighten. Team cars moved forward, directors shouted through radios, and the tension was almost tangible. The pace lifted sharply. What had been a 3-minute advantage for the breakaway began to melt away, minute by minute, until barely a handful of seconds separated the leaders from the main group. Ahead loomed Montello, the 2-kilometre climb at 5% that always turns this race from routine into chaos. Speed still hovered around 40 kilometres per hour. The fight was about to begin. Kevin Colleoni was the first to crack, his legs refusing to turn as the gradient bit. The front was now reduced to August, Baez, Ballerini and Milesi, fighting to hold what little remained of their advantage. At 94 kilometres to go, the peloton was within 40 seconds, and that was when the explosion came. Egan Bernal, elegant yet fierce, surged clear with a trademark acceleration that lit up the race. The Colombian caught what was left of the early break, choosing Lorenzo Milesi as his temporary ally, and together they became the new leaders. Their gap, 29 seconds and widening. Behind them, the favourites watched each other warily. UAE Team Emirates XRG stayed calm. In the car, the message was simple: keep control, don't chase too early. Rafał Majka moved to the front, pulling with quiet authority, while Isaac del Toro held position on his wheel, waiting for the signal. Pogacar remained still, almost motionless, eyes locked on the road ahead. He had seen this before, the brave move that burns brightly but fades just as fast. At 72 kilometres to go, Bernal and Milesi still held a minute. Their cooperation was perfect. 2 riders in rhythm, one chasing redemption, the other chasing a miracle. But behind them, the engine of the UAE began to roar. The speed rose, the line of riders stretched thin, and every face told the same story: exhaustion and fear. By the time they reached the 45-kilometre mark, Bernal was alone. Milesi finally broken. The peloton, now at half a minute, was closing like a wave. Del Toro began to lift the pace, legs spinning, expression blank. The calm was over. The time for waiting had ended, and somewhere behind his sunglasses, Tadej Pogacar smiled. The storm was coming. It happened when nobody expected it. With just under 30 kilometres to go, the race turned from tactical chess to pure chaos. Victor Lafay accelerated at the base of the climb, stretching the group, and that was the cue for Isaac del Toro to react. The young Mexican surged forward with power and purpose, dragging Tadej Pogacar onto his wheel. That move cracked the race wide open. Within seconds, the chasers had become attackers: Afonso Elalio, Bernal, Milesi and Simmons up ahead. Del Toro, Pogacar, Lafay and Roglic right behind, closing fast. 8 riders, 2 worlds colliding. At 26 kilometres from the line, the groups merged. The new front was packed with danger. Bernal's aggression, Roglic's calculation, Del Toro's hunger, and Pogacar's unpredictability. The pace eased for barely a moment, each rider glancing nervously at the others. Everyone was waiting for the attack, but nobody imagined where it would come from. Then, at 21 kilometres to go, Pogacar looked up, shifted gears, and did something only he could do. He attacked downhill. No warning, no hesitation. He threw himself into the descent like a man chasing the horizon, carving through corners with impossible precision. His rivals hesitated, unsure whether to follow or to survive. In a matter of seconds, the Slovenian had vanished. Behind him, confusion reigned. Tom Pidcock shouted for organisation. Roglic tried to rally the group. Del Toro did what he could to limit the damage. But Pogacar was gone, not just faster, but freer, flying between the barriers as if gravity itself had surrendered. The gap exploded. 10 seconds, 20, 45. At 12 kilometres to go, the chase had turned desperate. The group behind, Pidcock, Roglic, Del Toro, Bernal, gave everything, but the road ahead was empty. Pogacar was no longer racing them. He was performing for history. Every corner was a brushstroke, every descent a masterpiece of control and courage. By the final kilometre, the question wasn't if he would win, but how far he'd gone beyond the rest. Pogacar crossed the line alone, arms raised, serene. Another victory, another shock to the system. A downhill attack, reckless, brilliant, unforgettable. Pure Pogacar. The European stripes shimmered across his shoulders as he crossed the line. Tadej Pogacar lifted his arms in Varese, and for a moment the world seemed to pause. He had done it again. Another victory, another exhibition of audacity and control. This was his second win at the Tre Valli Varesine. The first came in 2022, but this one felt different. This time he arrived as both world and European champion already at the top, and somehow he still found a way to surprise everyone. To attack downhill, to defy convention, to win on his own terms. That's Pogacar. Fearless, unpredictable, unstoppable. Behind him, chaos turned into resignation. Pidcock, Roglic, Bernal, Del Toro, they all chased, they all fought, but none could touch him. Pogacar hadn't just beaten them with his legs, he had beaten them with his imagination. Because what separates him from the rest isn't only his power, but his ability to think differently, to reinvent how races are won. Each move he makes feels like an act of rebellion against predictability. Today, that rebellion became art. But among the chasers, one rider stood out. Isaac del Toro, just 21 years old, once again showed maturity far beyond his age. He was there when the UAE turned the race upside down. He helped launch the decisive attack. He never stopped believing. Every race confirms what many are starting to whisper, that Del Toro isn't just learning from Pogacar, he's preparing to follow in his footsteps. Not as a copy, but as a new expression of that same instinctive, fearless style. The kind that wins fans as quickly as it wins races. For UAE Team Emirates XRG, it was another perfect day. 2 generations, 1 vision. The present ruled by Pogacar, the future carried by Del Toro. Together they've built more than a team, they've built an era. And as Pogacar raised his arms once again, you could almost feel the message he sent to the rest of the cycling world. That every time he races, it's not just a contest. It's a reminder. When Tadej Pogacar rides, everyone else simply follows and applauds the inevitable.